welcome back to the Long Play Listening Party, the show where we go deep on local music and all kinds of other stuff. I'm Howie Howard from Mr. Furious Records. Pleased to have a crew of veterans in the house tonight, starting with Daniel Glasscock. What's going on, Daniel?
Hi, how you doing? Haven't
Real
been
good.
talking to you for 15 minutes.
Right, well, we'll talk about it some more in a second. Joel Bonner, welcome back to the show.
Yo.
Serene Fiends, who recently put out an EP I discovered just 5 minutes ago. I'll link to it in the description, but Joel's got a new EP out, so...
Wait, what?
Oh,
Hell yeah. I gotta check that out.
Absolutely. And also joining us, of course, Ebony Simon, Lefty Grove, producer Guinness. What's going on, Ebony?
Not much. How it goes?
It goes all right. I'm just going to straight up... tiny intro. This is a shameless self-promotion cast once again. Daniel and I attempted to make a house record this year. We failed completely, but we did something else instead that we hope you enjoy, and we're going to talk about it. But I'm just going to straight up get the music going here in just a second. The first track is called The Royal Hotness. And I guess maybe to start the conversation, Daniel, like, what do you remember about that? You came over to my house, you very generously offered to give me a vinyl copy of the Softcore Syndicate record you had just put out.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like January, February, and
Yeah,
we just spontaneously had a long conversation on my front porch that ended up with, well, let's try and make a house record.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the impetus for all that conversation was. It probably just arose naturally in there. But yeah, I brought you the record. It was kind of whenever I was putting that out, I mostly wanted to like just kind of reconnect with a few people I hadn't seen for a hot minute, based on COVID. That, of course, it seems so far away at this point, but it's still kind of, we're all coming out of that. And I think I've always admired your work in Night Mode, and it informed and inspired some of the stuff that I was doing. After that, it had to be after that, right? Linearly, in time. But I think house is a kind of a easy common ground for everybody to get on. So that's probably why we were like, yeah, let's make a house record. And
I remember it, I guess,
of what it was going to be beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like, well, let's make a record together. And then it was like, well, what kind of record do you want to make? Do you want to make an ambient record? Do you want to this or that? And I vaguely remember just like kind of me being down for anything, and maybe you saying, well, house is something I've thought about, and I have not really tried to do a straight house record before. And again, we didn't end up accomplishing that, but...
Yeah, I'd done a thing years and years ago that was pretty much just straight up house music with the early synthesizers I had. But I think you're talking about, like, you got the AX60, and of course you'd already had the MS-20. These vintage style synthesizers that it's kind of my bag, and that I've been, trying to work on a lot with Joel, for Serene Fiend. It's like back to the basics with his house music. That's where it just came from. Oh, I got this cheap thing laying around, like, put a 4 on the floor beat and let's get with it. I mean, that's really all house music is. I mean, maybe working some vocal samples, and but also house is so anything goes in terms of spirit. Like, it's so broad. House music is an underlier for so much pop music, and so much modern hip hop music, a whole bunch of really bad metal music, and industrial music is just really harsh house. So, I mean, it's a one size fits all kind of genre you can just jump into, right?
That was going to be one of my questions to you guys. Is how you defined house with all of this?
I think we threw it out the window pretty early on. It was more than so. Like everything I've said up to this point is true, but what I haven't said is that just the spirit of collaboration and just like working on music together for the first time and following things wherever they lead, and that certainly came first more than any genre. So the genre was just kind of an excuse or a foothold into the collaboration. And I think we were clear from the beginning that it wasn't going to be a strict genre thing. It was just a way to get a grip on, because like we just needed a way to start, right?
Well, I mean, lucky enough, I had a house track that didn't fit on any records I was putting out, that just tossed right over to you and got the ball rolling. It's a Throb Control, which comes up later. But...
Yeah, that was the first one. And when we get to it, I don't even hear. I'm not sure I appear on that track. I had some arrangement ideas, I think.
You helped with the arrangement. You re-inspired me to fix some sound design stuff, and also you did vocal effects on it. So.
Oh yeah, so I processed some vocals. Okay.
Yep. There's everybody plays it. This one though, this was the first time where I was like, oh holy crap, we're like surpassing the initial mission statement.
Yeah, we were. I felt like we were more than the sum of our parts right from the beginning. There was pretty instant inspiration and productivity, and we were from the get-go we were getting somewhere, and ideas were flowing. You know.
Loving the little acid line here.
Oh yeah. You don't got to twist my arm to get a 303 line in there. I like to tweak those knobs, you know. Yeah, this one's
really dope. I like this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course, you know, most of my techno understanding comes mostly from Aphex Twin. But of course, you know, people like Square Pusher. You know,
that was one of the questions I was gonna ask. Is like, is Aphex like kind of the base layer on house and ambient music for you as like a fan?
Oh, totally.
Or was that like kind of the influence that you used like on some of these?
I mean, his influence on me at least is so ubiquitous. I mean, it's informed the reason why I ever got a synthesizer in the first place. And I feel like his compositional ideas, his melodic ideas, motifs, the way he works percussion into texture, into melody, like in sort of this seamless transition, is so integral to like my musical language at this point that it's like, it's inextricable. Like you can't pull Aphex Twin out of me.
Yeah.
Like his Analord series, the all analog stuff he did around the turn of the century. That's like all pressed to vinyl and all that. That's like my Bible of musical language, and it's informed like the way I approach synthesis, the things that I buy at all, and definitely the way that I feel funk. Like in because of course, you know, like boogie and like old hard funk and stuff, they share a lot in common with house music because they sampled a lot of those records and then added in drum machines. A lot of late era funk music was defined by drum machines. The drum machine and the synthesizer was concurrent with the, you know, rise of Parliament all the way through Cameo, all and on into the house music scene of Detroit, into the UK. Like there's a connecting thread between all these beautiful like expressions of synthesis and drum machines. And I think Aphex Twin is one of those people who is able to like bring all of it together for me, so it would open up a door for me to go through and step back into time.
Nice.
Hey.
Yeah.
Pretty essential.
I do specifically like regret not really getting into early 2000s house a lot more. Like I don't know if you guys were in Lawrence at the time, but they were still doing KJHK out of the shack up on the hill by the stadium. And I knew a bunch of the DJs from like just being around town, and I would go to house parties if they had a band and they would jam out, and I'd be like, hey, if you got a mic, I'll freestyle, and just kind of, going from party to party, getting my name out like that. But I was so into like party mode because I was just moving up there. I was still young. I was having lots of fun. Never really got to do that before. That like I missed out on a lot of music from that genre because I was honestly kind of spun out, So like going back now with the experience that I have with music and how I listen to it and learn from it, I feel a real camaraderie with you on that because I'm like that with other genres of music. So like that's a very, very important baseline to have. And I'm really glad that you actually put that out there because I don't know much outside of like the classic stuff that everybody knows from Aphex Twin, Come to Daddy and, Window Liquor and Finger Bib. Those are like the only 3 songs I really actually know.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, like I have enough of the base knowledge of it that I can tell the influence is there.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a rabbit hole, just like every other genre of music. But yeah, I can't recommend like all those early Warp records people enough. Like Boards of Canada and Autechre and Square Pusher and all that, because like they helped take it out of this sort of like formulaic rave music culture that had kind of developed in the 90s and turn it into like, they call it IBM, for intelligence.
Yeah.
But that's like kind of an elitist mentality of it. Like it's about the composition. It's not just about, filling up a sound space for 5 hours straight. Like there are willful and important musical decisions being made by the second with that music, and it's really a good gateway to like understanding textural analysis in sound design. The kind of grit that you want from lo-fi things. Like it might have just been, oh, that sounds sick, I just mean in terms of a door of perception. Like old hip hop music, it's defined by like the S900 style productions or the Akai or that sort of thing, where like the samples are downgraded, and it adds to the vibe of the whole thing. Like what the IDM people, I think, were doing around the turn of the century is something that sort of transcends what most people are doing today and people were doing prior with electronic music, which was either like body music that evolved from like Cosmiche, or versus like today's just like anything goes EDM, like festival, like who cares what's on it, all sounds the same sort of thing. Like there's always been that, but like creating electronic music was an art form. It's I'd say it's as noble a pursuit as like classical music or a great songwriter's craft, because it's all about emotion and it's about texture and wrapping you up in
Speaking of emotion, that Rompler piano sound just takes me over the edge every time. I love that so much.
Oh yeah, my Republica ripoff. Ready to go, Republica.
So a quick little bit of gear talk, because I know that Nate will be interested when he listens to this, but so this track, I mean, most of what you hear on the main record is Daniel, which I 100% endorse, I want to be clear about. But we didn't start the tracks about 50-50. This started as a lep loop jam on my side, and obviously just blew out in a billion directions from there. And then the first track, The Royal Hotness, started as a jam on my Mana Tribe, Korg Mana Tribe, which I've modded quite a bit for the drum, like I've modded the drum sounds. But that's my gear contributions to the first two tracks. Everything else is Daniel.
Well, they were pretty essential for getting the ball rolling, I'd say.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, Howie would just give me big marble blocks of these tight little jams that had their own sound room to them, it feels like. Like, you know, whenever you got all your stuff running through like one little mixer or one DAW, and it all has its own sound stage. And then, like, to me, that's like the cassette you put in next to the rest of the speakers, and then I could build off of it. I could carve into it. I could mimic what he was doing on other machines and blend it all together and make sort of like this journey out of it. And those were my favorite parts of the album, is reappropriating his jams and just taking them off in outer space if I could.
Dude, this breakdown is ridiculous. I love it. Like the way that fade out happens with the drums and then goes to this.
And we're back.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Going for some Pink Floyd vibes on this one.
Yeah, back, but totally different. I mean, live bass now and different drum sounds and synth solo, and yeah. Whatever genre we ended up in, it's progressive X.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, it's working.
Oh yeah, we were gonna call it a progresso for progressive electro, but it sounded too much like a pasta sauce.
What was the tagline about acid makes you poop?
Oh yeah. Well, that's gonna be our signature hashtag on this one, is acid house makes you poop.
But it was something more than just acid. It was or acid house. Acid house makes you poop.
Yeah, acid house. It all sounds like farts, and like, you know, you're tripping and like your belly's like rumbling because it's got the weird gut microbiome stuff going on, and then you just gotta poop. Did too much acid.
Oh, I've been there. I'd buy that on a t-shirt, definitely.
No, we take this really seriously, guys.
I can tell by the song titles.
That's a song title.
Yeah, maybe that's gonna be the debut track of the Dharmic Beams too, is Acid House Makes You Poop. Thank you for that. We'll give you credit for that one. That's
Off the title of the same name, or album of the same title name.
yeah.
You know, I did, Daniel, I don't remember if I told you this yet, but I did have a dream. I get a lot of ideas in my last dream before I wake up in the morning, and I did, over the weekend, I dreamed a little idea and voice memoed it to myself that will be a Dharmic Beams jam. It's the first one for the next record.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
So it's only a voice memo right now, but it exists.
We'll get the ball rolling on that, man. I'm thinking Dharmic Beams 2, we get some collabs with, open up the floodgates to our friends here.
Sure, I dig it.
Collab record.
I'm down.
I mean, I've always dreamed of having, all of my Lawrence friends collaboration record. But it's just like, where do you find the time? When's a good excuse? Really, it's always the right time.
Yeah.
And you need no excuse, right?
Best time is right
That's
now.
right.
Yeah. I do know that the next time I'm in Lawrence, I plan on being up there for a few days. So if I can get any collaborations in, I'm always down to work. Like that's one thing you can always guarantee out of me. If you need a verse, I'll sit into the beat. 20 minutes later, you'll have a verse. Hour if I'm really just into it and I want to make sure that it's like super perfect. Because I'm weirdly like imperfectionist, but still perfectionist about it. But I'm just so used to the way that I write that like it doesn't take me long to get the idea out.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just a matter of revisioning. Like I talk about the 11-sentence paragraph as a rapper and how I use that to like write my rhymes, which is a strange way to do it, but at the same time it's like formulaic, and then I can go inside and change the rules as much as I want. So
Can you explain that a little bit? The 11-sentence paragraph.
basically like the standard version of in 3rd or 4th grade when they teach you how to write a paragraph with like, you know, the right pronunciations and the right like punctuation and how to like make everything sound unique within a paragraph that you write. So like no sentence can start with the same word or the same letter as the sentence before it type thing.
Oh, it's
And
like,
it's almost
like grammatical formalism.
yeah, that's another way to put it. Another way I like to put it is like English haiku.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, a haiku is 575. But like an 11-sentence paragraph isn't necessarily an 11-sentence paragraph. It's just a way of like compromising or conforming and like forming a precise idea with words in the English language. So it's more like just an outline to use when you're writing. So that's kind of the way that I like to write raps.
Okay.
Like on production, all rules are out the door though. It's a lot like
Yeah.
this. Like sometimes I think I'm gonna make a straight hip hop track. Next thing I know, I'm sitting on something that sounds like something a bluegrass band would do if they had a drummer. You know, I have also realized that like, and I've talked to Howie about this before, but like, I've never struggled with production in terms of like making music until I try to make specific house beats or anything along electronic dance music lines. Like, I struggle with it because it seems easy. You know, you listen to it and you're like, man, I could do this. And then you try and do it and you're like,
Sounds kind of
why?
cheesy, or yeah.
Yeah, like that's the one thing, like making danceable music and not just head nod music is where I really struggle with production. So like if I was to do some sort of production collaboration on like a dance track, I might just contribute drums and then let the other producer handle everything else because I have no clue what I'm doing. And I'm strong enough at what I do to admit that I don't know what I'm doing with that. Because that's the hardest genre I've ever tried to make a beat for.
Really?
Ever. Like I think honestly there's 3 tracks that I've done that way that I'm happy with. And one of them, I don't even have the original files to anymore because it was when I was just beginning to like seriously produce regularly. And my dumb ass didn't think to save all the samples that I used and all like the loops that I was using at the time. I just made the beat, threw everything out, and it was like, here's the beat. Not mixed, not mastered. I have no files for it anywhere. And it's just like, damn, I wish I could do that again. But I don't even have those programs anymore because I have advanced programs. So, but I think on this next project I have coming out, this instrumental album, my favorite track that I did that's anything like a dance track is the very last track on the album. And not to give it away or anything, but every time it comes up on my random when I'm listening to it, I forget that I made it. But
that's got to be a good feeling. It's like giving yourself a stranger.
It makes me feel really good. It's like, man, this is dope. And then I look at my like phone or whatever I'm listening to it on, and I'm like, oh, I made this. Nice. You know, and then it's like, yeah, you're on to something. But It's definitely very few and far between when it comes to like tracks that you would consider techno or house or EDM or whatever designation you want to put on it. Like those are the hardest ones for me.
Well, and I'm sure it would be hard to impress anybody who does that type of production because evidently there's 50 subgenres of all electronic music that all somehow are differentiated from each other in some way. You know, I go on like DistroKid and it's like I make electronic music. Yes, that's me. And then do a subgenre and it's like I've never heard of any of these subgenres. Who actually makes these
Dude,
subgenres like
whenever
deep
I
tech,
whenever I
big
submit to
house?
DistroKid, the first thing I put is alternative, and then it's just like all the subgenres in alternative. It's like I don't match any of these.
Yeah,
I do hip hop and then alternative on my secondary, and it just says alternative. It doesn't bring up any subgenres. And it's like it's an instrumental album. I want to make it like an instrumental album, but I don't have that option.
Nope.
If it's the second option, if it's the first option, I can still do it. But I like to let everybody know that it's hip hop first.
Well, yeah, like if you can't find like trip hop on those subgenres, like why did they even bother putting subgenres? Like you'd think trip hop is like the third most popular or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm out of touch with the electronics scene. But it's like you don't even have a subgenre for trip hop, but you've got like Pink Alien or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if Pink Alien is an actual genre.
Is that a group?
Pink Alien?
Is there a group?
Probably.
If there's not a group named Pink Alien, we should do a collab album called Pink Alien.
Oh, hell yeah.
Maybe that's the Dharmic Beams record.
Yeah, there it is.
I just hope we don't get sued by the Massachusetts Pink Alien with 386 Facebook followers.
Speaking of which, I found
probably an indie rock band.
Hardcore metal. I found like a hardcore band named Lefty Grove.
Oh no!
Philadelphia, I want to say, but it's spelled like the pitcher's nickname from the Yankees, Lefty.
So you're saying
the whole reason I spell Lefty Grove Lefte period Grove, because I didn't want to have that issue come up because I knew somewhere along the line I was going to run into that issue.
Yep.
But you know, I've also ran into a rapper on the West Coast. He just goes by Left, and that's what a lot of people call me. And it's just like, you know, I've had people go, "Hey, I thought you were playing the other night." It's like, no, but it said Left, and I'm like, no, I'm Lefty Grove. So
do your research.
That weird little designation saves me a lot of trouble.
It's important.
Makes all the difference. Yeah. So I want to check in with Joel in just a second, but just to catch everybody up, we started side 2. This is Don't Stop, I Want More, and it was
containing
Throb
from the movies Female Prisoner Scorpion 701 and the sequel to Female Prisoner Scorpion Prison 41 number 702 or something like that.
Something like that. And before that was Throb Control, which is the first track that we worked on together as part of this whole process. But Joel, I mean, I see some head nods. I mean, like, how are you feeling? Have you heard this before, or what's going through your mind?
I've listened to the whole thing like 1.5 times prior to this. Dan sent it to me a couple weeks ago, and I got to listen in, and then you resent it, and I kind of went back a little bit while I was at work, listened to it. You know, I grew up not really listening to a lot of house and electronic music, though one of the most important records of my life, and I will maintain that it is a good record no matter what anyone says, Eiffel 65's Euro Pop is freaking awesome, and I've listened to the shit out of that record.
All right.
As a kid, and that is kind of my upbringing and wheelhouse. That's more techno and like Euro. I don't know if you call it like Euro house or like they call it Euro Pop, the album that describes it pretty exactly. So some of the more experimental subgenres of house and electronic music are really fascinating to me, just because I don't have a lot of exposure to them. And even like Aphex Twin, like everything I've listened to, I've found very interesting, but I haven't like sat down and like really sunk my teeth into Aphex Twin very much, despite being in a band with Daniel for almost 6 years.
You don't have to listen to me if you're in a band with me.
Well,
sometimes it's probably better for you.
Yeah, I mean, you reference him every now and then, and you have the synth that he helped design the chord, and you use that in Serene Fiend.
Good.
Yeah, I
monologue.
mean, word monologue. One thing I did have a question about, all of these vocal samples that are on this record, where that is such a hallmark of like house music and techno that I'm familiar with. Where do these samples come from? Do you generate them yourself? Like what's the tea
Okay,
with those?
yeah, I was like interjecting it earlier, but the halves of this song, on the first half of it, I used the first movie there's a series of movies called Female Prisoner number 701 in Japan in the 70s. And it's like a women in prison film. It's like a female revenge fantasy sort of thing, and pretty formative in the grindhouse exploitation circuit. I think Tarantino cribbed a lot of it for like Kill Bill, things like that. But the first half of the song samples the first movie, Female Prisoner 701, and it's literally it's like a sexy women in prison scene where they're, being sexy with each other. And then the witch singing there on the second half of the song, that's from the sequel to it. I mean, there's like 7 movies in the franchise, but those two, I'd always wanted to work the first song section into a piece, and it just worked out perfectly with Howie's bass line, and he was doing like a throbbing gristle type thing in answer to the throb control that we'd done earlier, because this is kind of like a free association conversation that we're doing musically. It's like initially we conceived it like, I'm going to do this song on a certain set of gear, send it to you. You're going to finish it on a certain set of gear and then start a new song with that same set of gear that you finished the last one on.
Yeah, the process that Nate and I used for Orbital Debris.
Yeah, and that immediately fell apart for me because I've got way too much crap that I want to put on these tracks. But yeah, I just knew the Female Prisoner samples were just like spot on for that, and I only had to do a pitch correction on the second half of it by a half tone. So it was preordained. God just gave this to us. and
I remember you writing me an email about how psyched you were to use those samples finally, because you'd wanted to use them for a long time.
Yeah.
Was there anything else we took from anywhere, or because we made a lot of the vocal samples as well? I'm not aware of anything else that was sampled from anywhere else.
No, I mean, like I'd use some samples from Mars for like one of the 808 sounds on this track on Slack
Sure,
Dragon.
yeah.
Those are samples from Mars that I.
But vocal
processed.
samples.
Yeah, vocal samples. We did all our own vocoder work and that sort of thing. I was wanting to work in some talk box too, in true Daft Punk style, but I'm not very good at recording talk box, unfortunately.
I remember, so I sang the vocal sample in this one, and I was trying to do like Bono in the breakdown of Discotheque.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
It does kind of like a
Yeah,
with like a Hebrew H on the end.
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to do.
Nice. Yeah, I've always been curious about that, because like pitched vocal samples are such a hallmark of like certain subgenres of house, it feels like.
Yeah, well, imagine the richest European guy you know.
I know a lot of them.
He's got an Eventide, H9000 or something. He's like, this is perfect. I'm going to run every track through this H9000, and I'm only going to use the pitch shifter setting. I've got the guitars through the H9500, pitched to fifths, and I've got the vocals pitched to fourths through the H9000, and then we'll run it all through this Neve console. And like, that's the mindset. They're like, this sounds really cool. Let's run everything through it. And so everything is like one of my favorite records is Saint Germain's Tourist. I don't know, like if you like house music at all, Saint Germain's Tourist is, quintessential. But like, there's this track on there that samples like Albert Lee Hooker, and it takes his vocals and his guitar playing, and he's just an old blues guitarist who does like fingerstyle, a lot of like real lazy chicken picking type stuff, beautiful licks, and just runs it all through a fourths harmony, and then chops it up and puts it over this really bump and house beat, and it's just perfect. It's like one of the finest tracks in the house genre whatsoever. Can't recommend it enough. It's called Sure Thing.
Okay. Cool.
But yeah, do a little homework here.
Sounds fun.
Pretty sure I've heard that before, but I'll definitely go back and check that out.
I'm almost sure. Yeah,
Saint Germain is.
Yeah, it's one of the more popular.
They're one of the more underrated groups that did that kind of music, especially after the boom was over. They were still putting out quality music. So
after all the pop kids got tired of Fatboy Slim and Moby, they checked out Pitchfork for a few months before they decided it was pretentious and moved on to whatever everything people listen to these days. But yeah, there was a sweet spot, 2000s, where we had like Saint Germain and some good stuff, man.
Yep. Good stuff. That was even like the reemergence of Massive Attack time too, when they came out with like 100 Window, and then what is it, Helioland? I think is the latest.
Heliogoland, or Heliogoland or something. It's an archipelago, right?
Yeah. Like, and it was super weird because by that time that album came out, they were down to like 2 members, and I don't think one of them was like even an original member, but everybody slowly just kind of left that group. But they made probably one of their best albums after there was no one else involved. So, because I know 100th Window was just 2 of them. They didn't even have the singer with them on that one, but I think they had a guest singer on a couple of songs. But
yeah, wasn't it just down to Daddy G and 3DZ, Robert De La Naha.
Yeah, I
Banksy.
remember
everybody knows him as Banksy, right?
I mean, I saw a YouTube video about that, how like every time they have a show, Banksy art shows up in that town.
Everybody knows. It's an open secret. De La Naha is Banksy.
I think it's one of the coolest open secrets too, if they just allow him to be that creative and keep doing it. If it's him, allegedly,
Allegedly, of course. We don't talk about this in a public forum.
Like talking about Banksy and finding out the secrets is like exposing magicians or talking about Fight Club. You just shouldn't do it. Just enjoy the show. So,
oh man, Massive Attack.
I want to say a couple things about this one, which is so I played bass, or made bass samples really. Like I recorded some bass, picked the best parts and laid it out in a jam. But it's definitely, I took short clips and looped it. But it's kind of, Daniel's a bassist, so I was kind of intimidated at first to play bass for Daniel. And the other thing, So this is the song that features, you gave me, Daniel, this Digitech Digidelay pedal.
Yes.
And sweet, yeah. So I really love it. It's just for whatever reason, it's just a super musical delay, and I love the like standard delay modes, and especially I love the long one. When you max the feedback, it doesn't oscillate. It just it's like a loop. It just holds it in the buffer and repeats it endlessly without decaying or oscillating. It's just a perfect 100% feedback level. So I use that throughout the song. I played and manipulated that, so I'd play a little with the feedback, like 2/3 or so. And when I kind of found something I liked, I would just turn the feedback all the way up and let the loop ride for like a minute. And then I'd turn it back down and play something else. And I'd just do that. This song is all just one guitar take. And since doing this song, I've actually ended up using that technique or that process, sometimes with the Digidelay, sometimes with other delays that will do it or get close in other tracks. So that's become like a thing that I do now. Is like make guitar layers based on that.
That feature
Very cool.
is kind of like granular sound on sound.
Yes.
You find it in a more like in a tape echo setting or whatever, which I think is like something that gets kind of lost in the talk about digital delays. Like they are capable of creating their own soundscape if you use them right. I don't know. I feel like digital delay gets a bad rep some days, but I mean, I'll take a lexicon delay over most DAW digital delays any old day, because I mean, there's something musical and lo-fi about those, like the digi delay. My first pedal was a BB7. Like these are incredibly musical machines if you use their strengths.
For sure. Another one I love, and this is, I think, well known at this point, is the Ibanez DE7, which not only has beautiful oscillations, it doesn't do like perfect 100% feedback where it just stays, but it gets very close to that. So you can have a long delay or short delay that is just one tick above or below the edge of feedback. So it creates very beautiful, washy textures, and there's a lot of that in the Royal Hotness, and you hear it more on the dub, but there's a layer of the monotribe that's running through the DE7, very washy at times, but then coming back in through the monotribe's gate. So it's a gated wash, and it becomes just like a noise kind of element, but it's related to the synth sound.
Joel, were you about to say something before we?
I was gonna
nerding about
backtrack to Slag Dragon and just say
sure.
that that's a track that could live in either of the first two Half-Life games. And anything that makes me think of Half-Life, I'm all about. This is also fit a Half-Life game well too.
Well,
I was thinking that these would fit like in they would be just as home as like on Fallout 76 as the soundtrack, or like even if you were to rescore Hackers. Like I get a vibe from some of that, because there are a couple of things when I was like, you know what, I wouldn't mind seeing this in like a movie that's technologically advanced, and then the first thing that comes to mind is always Hackers, because they have this kind of soundtrack, or even Blade 2. But Blade 2 does that thing where they like put bands with, dance music guys, like there was Ice Cube and like not Fatboy Slim, but like Ice Cube and Paul Oakenfold.
Oh, nice.
Those kind of collaborations on Blade 2, the soundtrack.
Oh, that's like the Spawn soundtrack, where they do like Slayer and Atari Teenage Riot together or something, and like,
but on Blade 2 they did it more hip hop, because Wesley
like
Snipes being the lead character. and having more of like an underground hip hop feel to it with dance music. Because for some reason, clubbing vampires are always the ones that are getting in trouble in Blade. Never like the normal vampires. It's always like the club vampire. So there's a lot of club music,
Living life
a lot of dance music. Yeah, it's like, hey, what are we doing? Partying in the meat locker. Oh my God, blood shower, vampires. Like, wow. So I
wouldn't be caught dead at one of those parties.
No, I don't think I'd ever want to party in a meat locker. That doesn't sound fun. If someone was to invite me to like a city basement party or like a party in an abandoned meat slaughterhouse, go ahead and just, I'm not RSVPing for that one. I'm declining.
Yeah, I got my shows I got to catch up to, guys. Got a nice full blood gullet back at home, and
I got to return some videotapes.
I got to return some videos.
Yeah, just use the Patrick Bateman excuse.
Yeah.
Where are you going? I have to go now. Where are you going? I have to return some videotapes.
I was also gonna ask too, the song titles. With instrumental music, especially instrumental electronic music, it can be kind of random what song titles stick. Is there any specific stories about any of them?
Well, yeah, a lot of them follow kind of a thread. The first track that I'd done was Throb Control, and that was kind of done in a softcore syndicate, kind of the mixture between the acid stuff I was doing and the softcore syndicate. And Howie took that, and he sent me a thing called Control Gristle, which turned into When Death Is on the Line, because after that I'd sent him this track, which was originally called The Sicilian. And
right, so this is When Death Is on the Line is a Princess Bride reference because of the Sicilian, because never go in against the Sicilian.
When Death Is on the Line. And I didn't catch the reference because I've seen the Princess Bride twice. So I just took it to mean like literally like death is a line. And so like I had built the song in a way that's like supposed to like encapsulate a person's birth to death. It's hard to explain whenever it's not playing right now, or you have it fresh in your head, but it was meant to be like this sort of like journey through a person's like youthful optimism into like being sort of lost in the middle age, and then like finding solace and peace around the end of it. So that's a story, right? But then,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, in general, I was just playing off of whatever you sent me, or just trying to do things. Like I think I titled The Royal Hotness, and I was just trying to think of like what would a softcore syndicate song be titled.
You got it. You got the goods, kid. It's The Royal Hotness. That's what we're gonna call it. And then like Sex Sleaziastical Confusion was originally Fantastical Excursion.
Right, which is I had Fantastic Voyage in my head that day.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I just sexed it up. So it was a Sex Sleaziastical Confusion.
So there you go.
After that, that's all the titling is. It's just goofball stuff, but it has a story.
I have a question about Beyond the Black Neon.
Oh yeah.
Who did the synth riffs at the very end of that?
That's mostly just me on that one. I mean, Howie did
I think all I did was
the
the vocal sample and some arrangement ideas, but nothing else sonically.
Yeah, Howie definitely pushed it to be like, we need to make this long. Well, first it was way too long in my mind, and I wanted it just be the meat and potatoes of the song. And then it ended up getting too much taken out, and it lost a lot of like, and then he gave me a few pointers for like, this is how we should extend this section and this section. And this is the last one that we wrapped up. And I'm like, I'm almost considering cutting this because it just doesn't have what it needs. And then I decided to do you know Prince. You've heard of this artist Prince, or at least he was formerly known as that. Um, in his early days, whenever
He
he
wrote
was,
Purple Haze, right?
yeah, Purple Haze, that's right. In his early days, he had access to studios and stuff to do demos and stuff, and he did a demo for I can't remember. It's off the For You album, but he did a demo for that wasn't a final cut or anything, but he did the synth solo on it, but he didn't know how to play synth. He had a rough understanding, he could play piano and stuff, but he'd never really used one.
Yeah.
And to get his idea across, he played the track at half speed, and then did all of his showing off that is natural for Prince, like getting in all of his little motifs and ideas and stuff. And then whenever the track plays back at full speed, it's like this wild, awesome solo, and it's like a demo. I'm sure I can look it up and find it out later. But I wanted to try that technique with that one with Beyond the Black Neon, and I got my Moog grandmother back here, and I I tried to pretty much rip off Summer Madness by Kool and the Gang.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
you know that one.
Yep.
So I just ripped off that solo and then turned it into something that wove into the fabric of the motifs of that show up earlier in Beyond the Black Neon, and I think it turned out pretty all right. I think it.
Yeah, I'm glad I
It did.
convinced you to include it, because I always felt there's never a question in my mind that I wanted to include it, and I always kind of thought, like, and the way the sequencing worked out, we've been to all these places and we've done all this like incredibly progressive stuff and just been all over the map, and like that Beyond the Black Neon with the vocal sample and the way the chords, the first half of the song they're on the offbeat, and the back half of the song they come on the downbeat, and just we have earned a huge like pop moment, I feel like, and it makes this whole album is like, in one sense, a journey toward this triumphant moment at the end. All this darkness and chaos and weirdness, and like we didn't even talk about it yet, but like just being outside of like 12-tone equal tempered scales, and we arrive at just major chord, downbeat, there's a vocal you can halfway understand, and I just felt like we'd earned that moment, and I wanted to include it. So podcast listeners, Dharmic Beams is available now at mrfuriousrecords.bandcamp.com or any of your major streaming platforms. Also on lovecraft.bandcamp.com. We'll link to everybody's socials and Bandcamps in the show notes and video description. But we are going to take a break and then record another pod, because there's more Dharmic Beams coming out in a month. And I'll leave it at that for now. So listeners, we'll see you soon. And this has been Daniel, Joel, and Ebony, and I'm Howie for the Long Play Listening Party. Later, everybody.
Later.
Wow.